Welcome to the TCBC Bicycle University for February 15th, 2024. My name is Edward Ero, and I'm the coordinator for Bike U. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Norman Ahrentreich, the Regional Brevet Administrator for the Minnesota Randonneurs, who will be speaking about randonneuring locally and nationally. Before we begin, however, I just have a few announcements. This is the third session of Bike U for 2024. Please put yourself on mute. Please put yourself on mute. This is the third session of Bike U for the 2024 TCBC Ride Year. If you have not heard the previous sessions on the Minnesota Bicycle Alliance and Free Bikes for Kids, as well as all the sessions from the 2023 Ride Year, which include Ride with GPS, the Minnesota Public Schools Bike Education Program, winter bicycling, fat bikes, as well as all the sessions from the 22 Ride Year, please do so. We have many great sessions that you can go back and listen to right now. They include stuff on the environment, TCBC history, equity in bicycling, electric bikes, the Greenway. Please go to the Bike U page off the main TCBC website, where you will find the link to each of these sessions on the TCBC YouTube channel, where all the recordings are located. The recording of the session tonight will also be up after the conclusion of the meeting and after I have had time to edit and post it to YouTube. I want to thank our TCBC Bike U Council of Regents. This includes John Benda, Tim Rand, and Dan Miller for their work. If anyone else would like to join, we'd certainly appreciate you contacting us, because we like to welcome others on the council, because we want the council to be representative of the entire club and cover subjects that you'd like to hear. I also want to give a big shout out, as I always do, to Jim Pedersen, who has helped in the setup and maintenance of the TCBC Bike U webpage. Jim does many things behind the scenes for the entire club's website and is always available when I need him. Thank you, Jim. During the session tonight, please keep your audio muted, but do keep your video on so that we can show who is in attendance tonight. Remember, we are recording. If you don't have yourself on mute and make any noise, it switches to your video, and thus the recording gets messed up. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, but during the meeting, you can enter questions in the Zoom chat function. We will be monitoring those questions and make sure they get answered during the Q&A. Please do not interrupt the speaker and to ask questions during the presentation. I would now like to introduce TCB member and moderator for the program tonight, Sam Carroll, who will introduce our speaker. Sam, over to you.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this evening's Bike U event, Randonneuring Local and International. I am Sam Carroll, a member of TCBC since about 2009. And thank you to Edward and the Bike U Council for organizing events that are exciting events in the cycling community. So what do you think when you hear these 6 words? Randonneuring, brevet, RUSA, pancake, Paris-Brest-Paris, or 600K? Well, tonight I would like to introduce our presenter, Norman Ahrentreich, the Regional Brevet Administrator, who will be discussing all things randonneuring. Norman has been a lifelong cyclist. In 2003, Norman moved from Germany to Minneapolis, where he soon joined TCBC and became a ride leader. Norman discovered randonneuring through TCBC in 2008, thinking that these listed distances up to 600K were both utterly insane and impossible to ride. It turns out that Norman was wrong, at least on the impossible to ride part, and that these long distances are indeed very addicting. Norman has completed 10 Super Randonneur series, which a series includes 200, 300, 400, and 600K rides in a calendar year. He has completed the Paris-Brest-Paris in 2019, and Norman is close to achieving Randonneuring USA's Mondial Award for riding 40,000 K in qualifying RUSA events. Last year, Norman became the acting regional brevet administrator for the Minnesota Twin Cities Rochester region. Norman is a year-round bike commuter, and he also organizes the regular winter program for Minnesota Randonneurs, which hosts a 100 and 200K ride for each month, including November through March. Currently, Norman is working on his 8th R12 series in Minnesota. To qualify for an R12 award, Norman must ride an official RUSA 200K event for 12 consecutive months. And now I will turn it over to Norman. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, for the introduction. So let me move this. I started sharing my screen, and I'm going to move this over here. Okay. So thanks for the invite, Sam and Edward. So I'm glad to be here. As some of you know, I've been a member with TCBC for, I would say, close to 18, 19 years by now. So that's how I actually discovered Randonneuring. So I'll go back and discuss the history of Minnesota Randonneurs and TCBC a bit more in my presentation here. But so right now you see our logo and our motto that we have, Ride Far with Friends. So we came up with that motto a couple of years ago. It kind of emphasizes the spirit of Randonneuring. So let me see. I have here, I start with a photo. That's our last year's PBP contingent. So Paris-Brest-Paris. So that's a ride that many of you probably associate with Randonneuring, those ultra long rides, 1,200 kilometers, 750 miles every 4 years in Paris, going out to Brest and back. It's the longest, it's the oldest biking event in the world. So way more than 100 years history going back. And last 3 or 4 times, Minnesota Randonneurs had about 10, 15 people going every time to Paris-Brest-Paris and participating in it. I did it in 2011, did not finish there, stupid riding, one of the reasons. And in 2019, I finished it. But I did not do it last year's edition. Everything has to line up. So here you see actually Rob Welsh, longtime TCBC member and the previous RBA. So I took over the reins from him last year to organize and do the logistics, the administrative work. So what do I want to discuss today? So, okay, so the presentation will be somewhat 2 parts. So the first part is more what is Randonneuring, and it's gonna play into those stereotypes that we all have. Oh, Randonneuring is this super long, crazy stuff. Those insane rides, 3, 4, 5, 600K, and then those grand randonnaires of 1,200K or even longer than that. But the second part will talk about some of the recent changes that happened. So I would say Randonneuring has something for everybody. So we, or especially RUSA, the Randonneuring USA organization, has opened up and is offering now many rides below the 200K threshold limits. That used to be the limit. Hey, everything under 200K, that's not Randonneuring. So we offer now many rides beyond that or shorter than that. And so that's how we hope also to recruit new members and get them interested in long distance riding. So let's move on. What is Randonneuring? So it comes from France. So the first ride was 1891 PBP It's non-competitive, unsupported long-distance cycling. So emphasis on non-competitive and unsupported. So it's not a race. So typically you don't have any rankings. Oh, you won or so, and I came second. That's not the spirit of Randonneuring, but it's also unsupported. You're on your own. So when we have brevets, it's like we stop at gas stations or any other controls where we load up on food, drink, stop. And we are on our own. We're supposed to fix our bikes if something happens. You can stop at a bike shop if you need to. But yeah, typically no support vehicle behind you. That's different than, for instance, Ram style. Race Across America style. That's where you have a vehicle behind you and they hand you the food. Certain long distance races are, Ram style and Randonneuring style. Randonneuring style, depending on the distance, you can take 10, 20 hours more just because you're supporting yourself. So traditionally, Randonneuring covered these long distances starting with a 200K brevet, that's 125 miles. You have a time limit. It's not a race, but those time limits can be challenging. In winter, I struggle sometimes with a 13.5-hour time limit, and some are usually not an issue, but for some others, it could be. And here are the other typical distances that we ride. So up to 600K in 40 hours. So yeah, and then basically a series, so we call it 200, 300, 400, and a 600-kilometer ride. If you have those in a year, we call it a series. So it's organized by an organization administered by a French organization called ACP, Audit Club Parisien. So if that's basically your requirement, your qualification to participate in Paris-Brest-Paris. So the time limit for Paris-Brest-Paris is typically 90 hours. There are some start groups like 80 and 84 hours too. You start in a different time of the day, but the majority of riders chose the 90-hour time limit. I rode PBP twice. I struggled twice with the time limit, even though typically I'm one of the faster riders. So if something unexpected happens, 90 hours can be challenging. So yeah, I mentioned Paris-Brest-Paris, but that's not the only Grand Randonnée. So we have also other distances. It counts as a Grand Randonnée anything greater than 1,000 kilometers. So 1,000 kilometers and greater. And there are many great rides out there. I think I'll show some later in the those slides. So want to mention actually, so mission statements from RUSA, that's the Randonneuring USA organization. So we value the principles of collaboration, self-sufficiencies, and camaraderie over competition. And Minnesota Randonneurs, we also came up with a mission statement, promote the development, enjoyment of long distance riding. So emphasis on safety and camaraderie. So anybody can join us, and especially now with the shorter distances available, we have now almost a different focus group and different type of riders joining us. And yeah, they get hooked and then are getting interested in riding these longer distances that they thought before are impossible to ride. So yeah, I want to add here how far can you ride? So that's a typical question asked to randonneurs. How far can you ride? I typically say that's the wrong question. The correct question is, how far can you ride? And A, keep your job, and B, keep your marriage intact. And so the answer to those questions, how far can you ride? And then how far can you ride with keeping those, intact? Very different answer, very different. So Why Randonneuring? So I say because I can. It's so much fun. I love night riding. I like pushing myself a little bit further beyond, but it's also, you get to see the country and other countries in a ways that you wouldn't on your car. You go through areas that you've never seen before. You might be tempted to go into to visit a country to ride your bike there for 1200K ride. So I want to mention a few of those famous randonneur or randonnees that are out there. And so any one of these that is listed here on this page, we had a few Minnesota Randonneurs members doing them in the past. So I mentioned PBP already. There's London, Edinburgh, London, which is a 1,400-kilometer ride. And on the other side of the road, very often foggy or so, small roads, narrow. But yeah, still on my bucket list. Last year, we had one doing the North Cape 4000, which is from the southern tip of Italy up to the North Cape, past the Arctic Circle. So you traverse Europe. I had Jonas Nygaard, he did lengths of Sweden. I love these ride reports. A 600K or no, actually 1200K or longer in June with 24 hours of sunlight. So that's definitely on my bucket list. And yeah, incentive to go out there and get to see other countries. In the US, we currently offer probably more than 10 Grand Randonnees. When I went up to the RUSA website, 10 Grand Randonnees, that means 1000K and more are listed for 2024. And that doesn't include our Grand Randonnee. So Minnesota Randonneurs is offering also a 1000K ride, which will be very low key this year. So very minimal support. We have every 4 years the Coulee Challenge, which is a 1200-kilometer bike ride going into Wisconsin, 35,000 feet of climbing, very steep. So that's our flagship event every 4 years. So very, about 100 people from across the US and even international participated last time. So what are you training for? So those are the events that people are training for with us. They join the winter program, some of them, so that they keep, stay active during the winter. I'll talk about it a little bit more. And they train, with our, longer offerings than in the summer, up to 600K for these events. One of the events that's not a Randonneuring, that's Race Across America. I mentioned that already, from Oceanside to place in Maryland. And Pack Elite Tour, that's basically the same route, but you're not racing it. It's an organized event with support vehicles behind you. You have 21 days for that. Race Across America, yeah, you race. So we also had people participating there. Other races, Trans Am Bike Race, so also traversing the US, that's completely self-supported here. So the difference between this is the support. Tour Divide, also unsupported. So those are some of the rides that our members train for. I wanted to mention we had have a Randonneur. He has a movie out there for his Guinness World Record ride. I think 2020 pandemic year. So when he covered all the lower 48 states in 31 days. He joined Minnesota Randonneurs, did the winter program and got hooked, and then he looked for a challenge, and yep, he kind of broke this record and improved the time by more than 12 days. Other races, North Star Bicycle Race from St. Paul to Grand Portage at the Canadian border and back. Trans-Minnesota Wheel Race, 1,200-mile rides. So those are not brevets, but those are the things that our riders, our members train for. and get ready for it. Yeah, there are a bunch of gravel rides. Dam, I think, Day Across Minnesota again is on the offering. Alexander Ragnarok, Iowa Wind and Rock, crazy gravel ride with, I don't know, 10, 20 people starting, 3, 4 people finishing. So in April. So those are the rides that, yeah, people get ready for. And those are that's probably playing into your stereotype. Oh, those randonneurs, they're doing all this crazy stuff. So those winter races I did to Scobia last year, basically 1.5 months ago. Arrowhead 135 is on my bucket list. So we had one Minnesota Randonneur participating in the 1000 version, 1000 mile. So yeah. And why? Also, we emphasize motivation. So there are a bunch of awards out there from ACP, from RUSA, and Minnesota Randonneurs. We created our own awards. And that actually motivates people to get on their bike and keep a streak going, or go for their first 200K and get the series. There's a roller series, so that motivates people. And yeah, you stay in shape if you go for the consistency. These are 12 awards. We have fun. Very often when we finish a ride, we have a cooler with some beverages there, or if we finish near a restaurant, people go in there and have some post-ride refreshments and dinner and share ride stories. Let's not forget, impress your coworkers. They ask, what did you do over the weekend? You said, I rode 400Ks, 250 miles. So I don't impress them anymore with my speed, but just throwing out some mileage numbers, you get some respect. And I mentioned, get to know the country. So I know more of Minnesota than many others, I think, just because I rode through many parts of Minnesota already and on streets that you normally wouldn't take on your car. Going through Amish country, riding on bike paths. So yeah, that's part of the fun that that's why I like Randonneuring, and especially what I like night riding. A sunrise, for instance, you're riding through the night and then you're having nice sunrise. It's perfect. And anything after midnight, I love this ride. You own the roads. So Randonneuring events and ride types. So as I said, here we're going into the area where we said, hey, we're not only those crazy long distance cyclists. So first of all, I want to mention 2 different styles of randonneuring. There is the Audax style riding, and then there's also Allure Libre. So all those words come from French. So randonneuring started with Audax style. This is where you stay together as a group. You have a ride captain, and you ride a relatively slow pace, and the ride captain basically is responsible for keeping the group together. You finish together. The rules are very strict in terms of you have to have sit-down meals, where there's a 2-hour break and everybody's together, and the ride captain makes sure they finish within the time limit and says, break is over and now we're getting out again. There is the ride leader in front of the group and somebody in the back, making sure the group stays together. It's not a very fast style, but we haven't offered it yet. So mostly we're offering the Allure Libre, basically freestyle, free speed. Everybody is riding at their own speed. So if you join a Minnesota Randonneurs ride, you can have everything, basically. Sometimes the group decides to stay together, but sometimes, we have some really fast guys and they want to go. It might be already split up into many different groups, like 50 miles down the road. So very often you'll find riders that ride your speed. It's seldom that somebody new would have to ride alone. So that's not the type of Randonneuring on riding that we want to promote. It could happen. So it's possible that somebody joins and rides alone because you know, not everybody or didn't find anyone his speed. So, but we discuss this all the time. You know, have somebody more experienced, make sure people finish and have a good time. So we encourage, you know, forming bigger groups. So those are the two types of riding. We typically do Allure Libre. We are planning of offering some duck style rides as well on the shorter rides. So it's in discussion. Apparently it takes a little bit more planning because we need to follow all the rules. I've mentioned the Grand Randonnées, I've mentioned the brevets. So now let's go down the list here. So there are also team events. A traditional team event is called a flèche. That's French for arrow. The idea is you have many different teams from different areas in the country, and you descend to one common destination. So the team is between 3 and 5 riders. And so we're planning for next year a flèche event with the South Dakota Randonneurs. So they start from their location and we start from location. We'll descend on a common location. We had something with the Wisconsin riders. So the idea is randonneurs from different parts of the country, can they find a common location where they start from their locations and then descend to that? Logistically, it's always a nightmare. You know, yeah, you have to come back. So that's why it's rarely offered. So you have to plan for that. So the requirement, it's a 24-hour event. You have to cover at least 360 kilometers. Then there is the 2 smaller events, a dart. Dart is also arrow. 13 and a half hours with a minimum of 200 kilometers. So same time limit than a regular 200 brevet, but the same idea. And then Dart Populaire. And this is what we offer now for the last 2 years. And we have 3 Dart Populaire events on our calendar this year already. And it's an 8-hour event with a minimum distance of 120 kilometers. So this is where we plan on getting people interested in randonneuring. So you have your team. Again, you, as a ride captain, you come up with the route actually. You also have to follow rules. There is the requirement of a sit-down meal about at least 25 miles out from the finish. So it's a good team building event. So you get to know the riders on your group very well. Last year, I had an event where it would have been her longest ride, the 120K. And so she was very concerned, can she do that? And I said, well, that's the perfect event for you to get into randonneuring. So I, as a ride captain, I had to make sure to keep the group together. We finished with 5 minutes to spare. So pretty close, but we managed. So she finished her goal, her longest distance at the time. We had our nice sit-down meal at a restaurant. So it was a complete success. And we had 3 teams actually doing it. And then at the end, yep, we all get together, the different teams, and share ride stories. So I think Dart Populaire is a really good ride event, for you to, talk to randonneurs about their experiences and get interested. So what else do we have? We have permanence. So a lot of these rides, every route that we ride is a registered route, an approved route. So when we offer a ride, we have that route approved by RUSA and also by ACP sometimes. And you can turn that route into a permanent. So it's a different committee that approves that. And once it's a permanent, it means you can ride it anytime. So it doesn't have to be on that weekend when this 200, 300K ride is scheduled. Once it's a permanent, you go into the RUSA website, you register and say, hey, I want to ride that in the middle of the week because I have a day off, the weather is nice, and you get then your credit. So, and it's completely self-administered now. Those are also some recent changes. You pay once a fee of $10 with RUSA, and then you're registered for the permanent program for that year. And that's how you can keep your any, streak going if you're going for an R12 award or so. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do it without the permanent program. Popular rides, that's anything smaller than 200, 100K, 125K, 150, 200K. So those are populars. And then we now offer also gravel rides. So RUSA has agreed also now to give us additional time allowance. So if you have a brevet that has like 50% gravel, and gravel takes, is harder, takes more time, you get a time allowance for those 50%. So we have a lot of riders who love gravel rides. I mentioned before in the pre-meeting here, my take on gravel is I can think of more pleasant ways to be miserable. So I'm not really a gravel rider. But we have a gravel committee. They put, I think we have up to 6 gravel events this year on the calendar. So there are also permanents. You can ride them anytime you want. And you can get ready for any gravel race you want. So there are all types of different events, and you see Randonneuring is more than just, riding these super long distances. So, and I would love to see, again, more riders from TCBC joining us and checking out these smaller options and see whether, this is something you could enjoy. So checking time. So maybe 10, 15 more minutes. So Minnesota Randonneurs and TCBC. So we were once part of TCBC. All of our rides up to the 600K rides were listed on the TCBC calendar, and that's how I learned about this type of riding. I said, that's impossible. So then a few years back, the night riding rules changed for TCBC, and so we couldn't basically fulfill those night riding rules. So that's when kind of the connection loosened a little bit. So we, since then, we only list the rides up to 200K as outreach rides on the TCBC calendar. So we just had a board meeting and I talked to Rob Welsh, and he will make sure that all the rides, including the gravel rides for this year, will get onto the TCBC calendar within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So they're currently not listed yet. So we will add them now. We probably should have done that already for the winter program. Yeah, sorry for not having that. But yeah, so everything that's below 200K, including 200Ks, we will add within the next 1 or 2 weeks. So what do you have to do if you want to ride one of those rides? So there is the requirement for insurance purposes, you have to be a RUSA member. So then the next line, actually that changed as of today, because I brought up in today's board meeting that I said, hey, yeah, so when you want to ride, you either have to be a Minnesota Randonneurs member, which is a $25 membership fee per year, or you pay a ride fee. So, and I said, those $11 are now a little steep. There was a time period where we had to pay a ride fee for insurance purpose to RUSA per rider, whether they finished or not. That got discontinued last year. And so I brought it up, we should lower the ride fee. So it's now down to $5 as of today. It was voted on today, basically. So you can, if you just want to ride 1 or 2 rides with Minnesota Randonneurs, you can register on our website. So basically, you can sign up on the TCBC calendar. I want to ride that ride. So then we get a notification email, hey, there's a TCBC member who wants to ride it. But I would also request that you register on the Minnesota Randonneurs website. I have that listed then basically down below, MNRandos.org, because then you're included in all the communication. So you need to register there on the Minnesota Randonneurs website that you have an account, but that doesn't mean that you're paying Minnesota Randonneurs member. It's different. So you decide to pay the membership fee, then you just click on as many rides as you want. If you're not a paying member, basically you want to register for a ride. It says, pay $5. So yeah, that's the procedure for that. So maybe we'll ask or answer questions then on that later on. I wanted to bring up Randonneuring awards. There is a bunch of, I have here a link. So I'm not sure, Edward, whether we can distribute that presentation as well. So can I, yeah, if I click on here, so you fall onto the RUSA website. I only listed one brevet, but you could look as a RUSA member. Hey, is there anything where I want to go to? And you can see it really encourages ride more rides, ride in different regions, ride international, coast to coast, or as many states as possible. You pick your ride and then you go for it. So those are here the international awards administered by ACP. RUSA basically has yearly awards like the R12, 12-month or P12. That's for anything, for popular rides, and multi-years awards. So I got a couple of those. Sam mentioned this in my introduction. So that's my motivation. I picked something. So I'm going to get the Mondial Award probably in 3 or 4 months, and I have my 40,000 K. So let's see. So I'm back on the award site. So Minnesota Randonneurs thought, hey, what those other organizations can offer, we can do too. So as I said, I organized the Minnesota Winter Challenge. So when we have our winter riding program, so it's on maybe for the last 10, 12 years already. And this year we came up with our, award levels. So if you ride 500 kilometers in eligible RUSA events, and those are the events that we offer every month, a 100K and a 200K. So you could ride as up to 1,500 kilometers if you ride every one of those. That would be the gold level. And so if you just do 500, so any ride, 100K ride gets you an honorable mention. Bronze is 500 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, and then gold level is 1,500 kilometers. I came up with another level. It's the platinum level. Anybody who rides more than me in a winter in eligible events would get platinum level. So far, there are no takers. So I'm currently at 1,380 kilometers. Oh, my kilometers. Actually, it's more than that. I'm mixing kilometers and miles here. Actually, it's 80 miles from Tuscobia, so it's more than that. So yeah, nobody's basically challenged me for the platinum level yet. So, but it's a good incentive. We have 5 to 10 regular riders, but try to do every ride, but we have up to 15, 20 riders who do a few rides at least. And this year we've had already 30, 40 riders, given this winter or the absence of winter. So a lot of people came out and rode winter rides. So, but it's really a good, incentive to get out and enjoy. So I would say, yeah, I can wrap it up here. I have everything. Yep. So I wanted to convey the idea randonneuring is not just for the long distance cyclists anymore. That used to be in the past. RUSA has changed all that in the last 10 years. There were discussions when there were requests, hey, should we open it up for shorter rides? You know, we have aging randonneurs who are now 80 years old. They still want to go out, but they can't do a 200K anymore. So after a few attempts, now we have all these popular rides and the Ruler Award. Ruler Award is 100K, 125, 150, 200K, and the dart ride. So, and we have many people in our club now going for the Ruler Award. They might not go for a super series, which used to be the traditional way of going for a RUSA award and getting ready for PBP. So we have now a whole new offering. And as I said, you don't have to be fast. So you most likely will find, if you are on the slower side, you most likely find somebody who rides your speed. There is also the saying, PBP, my second time when I did it in 89 hours. I became a member of the Adrian Hand Society, like between 89 and 90 hours, 1 hour less than the time limit. I paid for 90 hours, I'll take my 90 hours. So yes, we have people who make a point of it to come in as close as possible to the time limit. They stop at restaurants or they do something fun along the way if they ride a little faster, just to enjoy it. So it's a different type of riding. And of course, we have those people who go for a fast time. So yeah, our, times for a 600K might be, finishing times might be spread out over 10, 12 hours even. So yeah, there's something for everybody. And I hope that I may have motivated some of you, or maybe you can spread the word. There is something for everybody there. And I hope to see some of the TCBC riders joining. So with that said, maybe I'll hand it back to Sam and open up for discussions.
All right, I'll hand it off to Edward.
Yeah, Norman, can you just take your screen share off? And
Yes.
then we'll just open it up for questions. I know there was some questions that came through on the chat. One was, with the $5 ride fee, do you still have to have a RUSA membership?
Yes, the RUSA membership is something that we cannot change. So Minnesota Randonneurs is part of RUSA. We are an organization. So RUSA organizes, basically. It's all under the umbrella of RUSA. RUSA offers the insurance, and therefore RUSA membership is required.
And then when you post the rides, it's a TCBC ride. It's an outreach ride, right? For TCBC?
I think so, yeah.
So it's listed as an outreach, but it has to be, it's an organized ride, but you have to be a RUSA member plus a local fee or a member to ride.
And Rob Welsh, he said that he will mention that in the ride description, these requirements, RUSA membership, and then either Minnesota Randonneurs membership or a $5 ride fee. So he will mention that.
Okay. And one of the other.
That's correct, Norman.
Pardon?
Sorry, this is Rob here. Yeah, you're correct, Norman. That's how we're going to do it this year.
Yeah.
Dick Stardick asked, what type of lighting systems do you use for night riding?
Mm-hmm. So there are different approaches. I personally prefer hub-powered systems. So I have three bikes that I can use for any of the randonneurs, and everyone has a hub system. So I am independent. I also have then a USB port on the bike, so I can run my lights permanently. Also, I ride with lights on during the day, and I can even charge any GPS unit or phone. There is sufficient power left. But I also have a parallel system, battery powered. So I have really good, front lights. I love Denati lights, but there are so many lights out there now that are really good, that have long run times and that are really bright. I am a night riding fanatic, and I am a light fanatic. So I have 10 different backlights, so lights that notify me, hey, I'm about to die, and it's making a noise, because sometimes I don't hear or notice the backlight is off because the battery died. So I experiment, I test those rides, and there are so many good lights out there now, especially on the for back. So you don't have to switch to a hub lighting system. So you can do those long rides exclusively battery powered. It's easy to do now.
And Sam asked a question, what about pancakes? I'm not sure what that's about.
Do we offer pancakes on the pancake ride? So I mentioned we have the family of pancake rides. So I started created the Northern Pancake route about 12, 13 years ago. So there was a time when we asked ourselves the question, can we do a 200K in Minnesota in winter? Can we get an R12 in Minnesota? And I wrote Rob's ride that he had, what was it?
The Apple Valley Classic.
William Dodd Classic, and it had about 4,000 feet of climbing. It was a sub-zero ride. I got lost, and it took me 15 hours, so beyond the time limit. That's when I said we need something easier for winter rides. That's when I created a flat as can be, therefore the name Pancake, on the northern side. So it has maybe 1,000 feet of climbing, that ride. So it really became popular. So we offer this ride now as a night ride. We call it then the Golden Pancake. The idea is we offer it as a night ride around the summer solstice with a full moon. Therefore, Golden Pancake. We ride it basically every month during the winter months. We have done once a winter solstice night ride, but the stars are rarely aligned. For that, I want temperatures not too cold, a recent snowfall, the full moon. So those have to be lined up. So we've done it once only in the past, a winter solstice night ride on that road, and it's just perfect. It's like the moon reflects then on the snow. You have wide open fields. We love it. So it has helped a lot of Minnesota randonneurs getting their R12s. So we have now 16 Minnesota, was it 8 or 16? 16 Minnesota randonneurs with an R12 award, and most of them with the pancake. A few years ago, I offered them half a pancake, a smaller loop. We start out the first 20 miles together, then the routes split, half a pancake. And last year I added a 300K version. So the first 60 miles are identical, and then it wears off, goes into Wisconsin. That one's called Pancake with Toppings. So you have some texture in there, some hills on the Wisconsin side. So yeah, the 200K places where you can actually stop and get pancakes. So coffees.
I've known Norman since he started doing these, just as Rob here. And one of the things that the pancake ride has really evolved into is whether it's during the day, which typically is, or it goes at night, is we tend to stick together. That's one of those rides that we just kind of stay as a group. But there might be a couple groups, we'll stay as a group through the whole ride, and really makes it it's not a race. We just want to stick together and have a good time. There's good controls, good places to stop and eat along the way, and it just works out to be a real friendly ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then Norman, what do you use for navigation? I seem to remember that randonneurs had to check in at different places. Are you using GPS devices now, or you still use cue sheets, or both?
Yeah, it's both. I would say 90% or more it's GPS. So for every route or ride that we offer, there is a ride with GPS file that you download, and then you have navigation on your computer. You can print out the cue sheet from that Ride with GPS file. So still recommended. So there are a few routes where we have, old-fashioned cue sheets that you can print out. But once we switched over to electronic proof of passage, EPP, it's a GPS file, track of your ride. It has gotten a lot easier. And I would say, 95% of riders use now electronic proof of passage. But yeah, it's, sometimes nostalgic when you think of it. Oh, you had your paper cue sheet in the middle of the night. You clipped it on your bike and you navigated through. Somewhat nostalgic. Controls, also you had to go in the old times. You had a brevet card where you register, you got a stamp or a signature from the gas station attendant. You were there at that time. So we still offer that at request. But typically we can now look at your Ride with GPS file. Yep, you were everywhere you were supposed to be. So, and that's how we control basically.
So with GPS, a rider has to turn that in to prove that they did the ride.
Yes, we asked them to be a member of Minnesota Randonneurs group on Strava. So when you're on Strava, we ask you to be a member of that, then it shows up there and I can go in there and get the time out when they finish a few hours later than me or somehow. So we can look there, or if they don't want to be public, some people chose, to have their rights hidden, or they just have the GPS file. I say, send that track to me that I can look at it on my computer. So it's either or.
Yep.
But the most efficient way is you're a Strava member, you're a member of the Minnesota Randonneurs group there, then I can see it right away there.
Other questions? Anybody else?
Yeah, I just one question. I presume on your winter rides, then do you generally ride with studded tires, or how do you approach winter riding conditions?
Yeah. So first of all, we plan schedule these rides early in the month, so that we have the option, if there is bad weather, a snowstorm, we have the option of rescheduling, and it's still in the same month for your R12 award. So last year it was really needed. We rescheduled left and right because I don't want to ride on a snowstorm day. A day after, we need 1 day of cleaning the streets. So typically 2 days after, and last year was a challenge with that. So when we have those rides, when we actually do those rides, road conditions should be that they are rideable. Studs, yes or no? It's question we debate all the time. Studs have a speed penalty. They slow you down. Some people show up sometimes with slicks and have a problem. So my approach right now is I have a front studded tire when there's ice out there. I say studded in the back, I don't need to. I love the Top Continental Winter Pro. It's a rubber tire with thousands of little ridges. It gives you good traction on most conditions, even on ice. There are limits, but that's the best compromise that I found. So typically I ride on these. So this year I have only had this, not studded tire territory yet. But yeah, there's always discussion beforehand. What tires do we do? We have a stretch over the Coon Rapids Dam, which can be slippery. Last time, 2 weeks ago, we had somebody who crashed again there. It's most slippery Coon Rapids Dam in winter when there's south wind. The mist is blowing over the Coon Rapids Dam, and it's around freezing. That's when it's most slippery. If it's 10 degrees, the ice freezes as crunchy ice, and you can ride through over. Most slippery, it's between 25 and 30 degrees. So experience. So we have winter detours. So the Northern Pancakes is a regular route. And by now, I know we have 3 or 4 stretches where the road is not plowed, or the bike path is icy on the refreeze season, and we take detours for that. So we tend to avoid the sketchiest parts of it, and that's experienced by now where I have, here a winter detour is useful, but I still recommend winter tires, but it doesn't have to be a studded tire. And if studs, only front is required, in my opinion, if it's icy. Yeah.
Other questions?
With all these long rides you do at night and in the winter, you must have some good stories. So tell us a good story.
I would like to pass that off to Rob. He loves to tell the story. My first, was it 400K ride? Remember that in Randolph?
Yes, I'm not sure if that's a story that would be the right kind of story for this group.
I'll think about you tell that one.
But suffice to say, Norman was just getting into Randonneuring. He's still a good rider, but he got tired, and we ended up stopping at this bar. It was the only thing open to get a Coke. And when we got in there was a woman there that saw Norman, and for whatever reason, she decided that she wanted to take him home. And after a few minutes, I said, Norman, we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. It's good for you. But on the way out, there was these 3 or 4 guys hanging out on the balcony in the front, and they asked us where we're going, and we had 25 miles to go, and it was like 1 a.m. This is a long ride. And one of the guys, he kind of looks, he says, I'd love to help you guys out and give you a ride home, but I'm just getting over my second DUI, so I don't know if it'd be a good idea. So we made it home safe, and Norman learned from the experience.
The interactions are sometimes great with the motorcyclists. We see the Harley riders. And I have to say, of course, I didn't even notice the woman was sitting on me. I just noticed, because Rob kept telling the story. But maybe another story so I thought about it, good story. That's my 2019 PvP experience. So as I said, I finished within the 89-hour club. But I was at times 10 hours over the time limit. So I had some leg issues after PvP, after the turnaround. Suddenly I couldn't pedal on my right leg. I had to clip out. I was pedaling just with one leg, shooting pains, never had it before, but it was like, okay, I'm ready to quit. I told Jonas, just keep on going. And I had a hotel in Carhay, the first stop then on the way back after Brest. And I stopped and I was debating of handing in my brevet booklet, like, I'm done, I can't ride. I said, well, I'll keep my options open. So I went to the hotel. I was breakfast type. So I had a great dinner, went to bed, slept 10 hours, had breakfast. And so we were all talking, and as I was sitting there and debating, oh no, I also had a bailout option. The car was there, where I could throw in my bike and just drive back. And I said, oh, the second DNF. But hey, wait a minute, the weather is beautiful. I came here to ride my bike. I don't even know, does my leg even hurt, So I said, hey, Lynn, drive me back to the route. I hop on the bike, see how it feels. If I give you the thumbs up, I just keep on going. Right. So I had a 16-hour break, 10 hours over the time limit. So I hopped on the bike there, didn't feel anything. So I kept on going, gave her a thumbs up, and I was about 500 kilometers out from the finish. And now I was riding in what I called the area of shadow dreams. Everybody you passed was like, they were devastated, demoralized, they were over the time limits, just making it to the next control. And here was I felt completely recovered. I had a 16-hour break. And I realized, hey, wait a minute. I could ride this thing home, let it be 100 hours or so overtime limit. That's still better than taking the car home. That was my initial intention, but then I started calculating in my head, you have 10 hours more on the return leg. First time PBP on Render Brain, I didn't even notice. So I said, I keep riding it. Maybe I can ride back in and into the time limit. And so first control, I still got my stamp in the brevet book. They had already, taken away the electronic timing mats. So I wasn't even registered electronically, but I had my stamp. Second stop, the restaurant was still open. There was logistic. I could eat at the control. And the timing mat was already, no, the second stop, the timing mat was already there. Restaurant was already closed. Third stop, everything was there. Fourth stop, I was back in the time limit. That was kind of 200 kilometers out. And then I actually waited 5 minutes in Rambouillet to make it into the 89-hour club. So it's like, yep, I made it. So just keep on going. It was a tremendous experience. Loved it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Are there types of bikes that are better, not so much winter biking, but during the summer, are there types of bikes that are better? And do you use like panniers? Do you load a lot of stuff on your bikes?
It's probably rider specific with preferences. I have a commuter bike that I've used for Randonneuring before. It has panniers. I have my long distance bike, which I've built up in several ways. It had panniers. I used that bike for the North Star bicycle race. And I show up during the pandemic year with 2 heavy panniers and on the back. And I lift my bike at the start and my carbon rails from the saddle break. So I was heavily overloaded for that because I had liquids in there. Oh, I'm not going to stop for the first 200 miles. I don't need to stop anywhere. Everybody else was showing up for a race. I was showing up for a bikepacking trip. I had to borrow a saddle for that one. So I love panniers. Sometimes when I'm ride leader and I ride out with the bike, I take that bike because then I have the sign-up sheets in there. But you rarely see somebody else with a pannier. It's typically a frame back. Yeah, it's position. I think you have to experiment what works. I have 3 bikes that I can choose from. Yeah. I have a road bike, long distance bikes, commuter bikes, and all get used for Randonneuring.
Great. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, so we'll end up the session here. Thanks again to Norman for speaking to us tonight. Also, a big thanks to all of you for attending this session of TCBC Bike University. The recording will be up shortly after it is uploaded to our TCBC YouTube channel. The link will be in the notes for this session on the BikeU webpage, as we've done in the past. The Council of Regents is working on other sessions, including bicycle maintenance, commuting by bicycle, professional bike fitting, and the TCBC Tuesday Tune-Up 25th anniversary, to name just a few. If you have other ideas for programs, please write to us at bikeu@biketcbc.org, and the council will discuss them at our next meeting. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you again next time.